viewers. My name is Jennifer Nash, and welcome to Wired Women for today. My guest is Ceri-Jane Hackling, and I will let her introduce herself to you. Hey, Ceri, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Who is Ceri?
Oh God, how long have you got? I'm the Managing Director of Cerub Public Relations. I started the business in 2003 after working in London for several years. I moved back out to Buckinghamshire in 2002 to move in with my partner. And I started the business after that, basically. I got made redundant from my job and decided that I could do it by myself. And like I said, I live with my partner and my cat in Buckinghamshire. What else do you need to know?
Oh, that's good. What's your cat's name?
He's called Elliot. He is currently sat.
That happens to be my husband's middle name, so I'm in love with him already.
He's very cute.
Amazing. So thank you so much for joining us on Wired Women, Ceri. And I know that you are a current contributing editor for Spotlight magazine. Thank you so much for all the advice that you've been given these upcoming entrepreneurs and emerging thought leaders. So on that note, I just want to just take you a little bit deeper into that aspect that you've already been doing so kindly. How would you encourage emerging thought leaders to, if there was just the one thing that you would say to encourage them right now, especially during COVID-19? I haven't actually addressed this subject nearly enough, considering that we've been doing these Wired Women programs during this COVID-19. How would you address this situation?
I think the one piece of advice I'd give right now is don't be shy. I think that a lot of people are scared and nervous about talking about their opinions and their successes, and they look at their competition and they think, okay, well, so-and-so's being seen here and so-and-so's being seen there, why am I not? And the reason that competition is being seen there is because they're putting themselves forward. I think half the battle is actually almost getting out of your own way and having the confidence to take your thoughts out to public.
Right. So, yeah, I hear you. So what I hear you saying is that they should be confident enough and be in a position to articulate themselves and take that front row seat, right? So there's a lot of gender parities going on in the world in general for women. I think that women tend to shy away from publicity. They tend to have that the imposter syndrome, and they just don't want to put themselves out because they are either ashamed of that they don't have enough to give, or like you say, they just don't feel like they're good enough. So as a PR professional, a female in an industry that is very underrepresented in terms of women representation at C-suite level, what sort of advice and power tool do you use to get your voice heard?
I think it's taking the opportunities that exist, and if there aren't opportunities that exist, it's creating your own. So it's not being afraid to tell your story, being active on social media, sharing your opinions, talking to the press, coming up with angles that you can use. Even things like this, you know, a lot of people don't want to do webinars and interviews, and I have to be honest, I struggle with it as well, but I think it's part of the same thing. So it's finding the opportunities that are there and taking advantage of it, and not being afraid to speak up. You know, we saw an opportunity recently in the Daily Express, and on the one hand I kind of didn't want to put myself forward for it, but then I thought, right, who else is going to do it if I'm not? So I did, and we got featured in the Daily Express. But you know, making contact with people, networking with people. I've done a few webinars recently with contacts that have just come through opportunities that through networking, and it's just really important to take advantage of those when they happen and not make excuses not to do it, because you could spend forever making excuses not to do something. But you take the bull by the horns and just get on with it, and don't worry too much about what anybody else thinks, because if you are an expert in what it is that you do, then the people watching often don't know what you know. I think women also don't realise what they know. You know, you kind of, you think that what you know is obvious to everybody else because it comes as second nature to you. But in reality, the people that you're talking to often don't understand because they're in a different industry.
Yeah.
So, you know, have confidence in your own opinions and your own experience.
Yeah.
And share that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. And I agree with you when you say that most of the times people are just afraid and they just don't even know what to share. But also, I think that it's intimidating, isn't it, to be on camera? I mean, I'm just getting used to being on camera myself. And I think that as people who are actually in PR are the most shy to be in front of camera, because we're so used to pushing other people to be in the public eye. So this is why I created Wired Women, to say, let me create a platform where I actually practice what I preach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where I can actually coach other women. It's a training ground, isn't it? Where other women that might be otherwise shy to get press coverage can come and actually use this as a platform to just literally get those training wheels going. So thank you for that, Ceri. So as I was saying, specifically about PR, because I see you as a thought leader in PR, in the PR industry, especially in the UK. You deserve it. Especially in the UK, where there's a lot of inequality and in terms of representation, gender representation, and not even withstanding the diversity in terms of racial representation, which is the reason why I actually not in corporate PR, but I'm doing my own platform. But that's not about me today, it's about you. So yourself as a woman in PR, I want to understand what your journey has been and how you've actually managed to stay afloat and sustain your business as such.
Well, when I graduated, I got a degree in English literature and language, but my dream was to be in publishing. I really wanted to be in publishing. I wanted to be an editor. And I had a few jobs in publishing, and I walked out of the first one. I got fired from the second one, and just ended up temping at a PR firm in London. And the day I started, there was a casting for male models. So we had male models coming in and out of the office all day. Okay. And I thought, this is a fun job.
Interesting.
So, that's a good place to start. So I stayed at that agency. I ended up getting a full-time job there, and from there I bounced around London doing different jobs. So I was press officer for a charity for a year. I worked in trade PR for a year, and nothing really took. I didn't really find my niche. And then in 2002, I moved back out to Buckinghamshire, and I got a job with a PR agency here. And I got made redundant after 6 months, and that was when I thought, okay, well, I can do this myself. And I think it's just sort of sheer force of nature. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but I never had any other option. I'm not very good at being employed. I'm not very good at being told what to do, which isn't ideal sometimes. But I have no option than to employ myself, because I have faith in my own abilities.
So that's an amazing common thread that I'm hearing from most of the women. But I think you and I have much more in common. First and foremost, you did English literature. I did English as a second language because I'm not a native speaker. So I did English as a second language, but I also done publishing and now PR. So it seems like there's certain attributes and traits in your personality. I don't like being bossed around. I like being my own boss. So I think I see those as certain traits that we have in common, and that perhaps that makes a very good PR person. So you're good at fronting other people to be the best versions of themselves. And so I think that kind of works that way. So how would you then, I'm saying as a thought leader in the new normal, help people to increase their visibility and their credibility? How would you go about guiding or coaching if a customer had to come to you? How would you start that journey for them?
I think with clients that come to us, we like to start by stripping it right back to the beginning, because people in the middle of their business, they forget why they started it, forget what they started out to offer to clients. So for us, it's about stripping it right back to find out what their ends and objectives were, find out exactly what the skin of their business, because if we don't understand exactly how it works, we can't take that forward. So I think it's helping people understand what it is that they do. We do kind of strategy meetings with clients, and what comes out of those are usually quite interesting insights. We had a meeting with a company a while back, and they made software for HR firms or HR departments, and they were absolutely convinced that they sold software. And we said, you sell software, but actually you're fulfilling a gap in the market. You're helping HR departments, solve the problem that they have. And they just couldn't see it. They couldn't see, but what they were doing was not what the clients were buying. So, by stripping that kind of information right back and explaining exactly what they offer, you can often kind of encourage a company to change the way that they see their own company. And that impacts on everything. That goes back to the website, it goes to their social media, it goes to their SEO. Their whole marketing then needs to work around their kind of key messages and their reasons for doing what they do. Yeah. So once we're able to do all that sort of deep dive information sessions, then we can take it forward to the press with articles about what our clients can talk about. And it could be anything, it's the industries that they work in, they have insight into. So by addressing the issues that those industries face, they can generate a lot of publicity for themselves and the expert in their subject, in the industries they want to target.
Absolutely. So it's about engaging with the audience, with their customers, and expressing what their brand value is and putting themselves pretty much in the shoes of their audiences or their prospective clients. That's amazing. That's great insight. So I want to take you back to the time. How long have you been in business now? 17 years, I remember.
17 years, last Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Congratulations, by the way, again.
Thank you.
So 17 years in doing and running your PR agency, that actually makes you an expert in what you do. If I were to take you back 17 years from today, what sort of advice would you give yourself then, as a person trying to get into PR?
Well, at the time, when I started the company, I didn't know what I didn't know. So it was almost just learned by mistakes. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that I would tell myself anything different, because I kind of think if you go back and do things differently, you wouldn't end up where you are. Yeah, learning by mistakes is kind of key. When I started the company, I didn't know about networking, and then I met someone who told me about networking. So I started going to networking groups, and through those groups I met other people and started to build it from there. I think that without making mistakes, you can't accomplish anything, because it's those mistakes that you learn from. Yeah. And when I give talks to schools, I sometimes go to schools and talk to them about careers and things like that, and I often say to them, I say, it's not the failure that matters, it's what you do with the failure. Yeah. So if something goes wrong, you just have to pick yourself up and dust yourself down. But I think that's the only thing that you can learn that through is experience.
Yeah.
So going back, I'd probably give myself different outfit choices. Maybe don't wear that, but in terms of actually how to start it, I think I'd probably leave it alone, because we've got to this point through the mistakes that I've made.
So I just want to pick your brain on, you talked about school, and as you know, that even though I was a mature student, I went back to university to do public relations and advertising. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I reached out to you to be one of my sounding boards or my mentors, so to speak, to guide me into the path that I wanted to carve for myself with regards to thought leadership. My question is, when I was at university, I noticed that there's hardly any women female lecturers, PR lecturers. And but also last year in 2019, I was privileged to go on a study abroad program to Boston in the US, where the opposite was the truth. The entire staff in the PR and advertising department were female. So talk me through the disparity between the UK. Okay, you probably won't know why America is that way, but can you make me understand why higher education, especially in PR, has that blank space for women representation?
I'm not sure I can give an answer to that, really. I mean, my colleague Anastasia went to university and studied PR, whereas obviously I studied English. So she might have more insight into that. I mean, the only thing, PR generally is known as being a profession that's mostly filled by women. But like you say, any senior levels tend to be taken by men. And I don't know if that's a combination of a number of things, sort of people taking children. Because the other thing I think is that a lot of women go into freelancing because when they have children, it kind of changes their priorities to a certain extent. I'm generalizing here, so I don't have children, but I think when you have children, you have to fit work around school hours, and you have to fit it around other things. So therefore, having a very senior job in a PR agency is probably more challenging than freelancing. I mean, freelancing brings its own challenges, but that's the only thing I can guess that really changes.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because I think it's about balancing. Because I spoke to another guest who is also happens to be in the PR industry, and I think what she emphasized on was the freedom. So I think you really hit the nail on the head, because I think, and I do know that PR career is very demanding. So to be able to, as a woman, to be able to have that balancing or work-life balance, I think that it's a natural transition to go into freelance, or because you can't do part-time working for a big agency, they're not going to have it. So, but I think that's something that we need to start having a discussion, some discourse on, and trying to see how maybe flexi working and stuff like that can become a big part of the PR industry, because otherwise we just can't sit back and just say, that's fine, we're excluded from the table. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably going to change. I mean, everyone now knows, over the last 3 or 4 months, people have been working from home, so people know it is more doable, and people have become more accepting of colleagues and staff having private lives. Lots of people have had children wander into shot and cats walk across the table, so you've seen more insight into people's actual real lives, and job shares and things like that. It's more doable with technology.
Mm-hmm. So what I would say then, what sort of advice would you give to a person who's just graduating in 2020? Obviously, they're graduating under the COVID-19 cloud, but they're PR females that are just starting out. What sort of advice would you give to them? I think the advice is to know your industry, know what it's about. I've had lots of people, we've had work experience students over the years, and we've had some really good ones and some really bad ones. A lot of people go into it thinking it's all glamorous. We had one girl come in who was all sort of flicky hair, but didn't actually understand that when you talk to the media, it's not about what we want the media to say, it's what we have to adjust our message to what the media wants, because they're talking to their audience. Right, at all, she was doing a PR degree, but she didn't grasp that's how it worked. So, really understand the industry and understand what they're looking for, and know the media as well, because we've had people come in and I've said to them, what newspapers do you read? What channels do you engage with? And they kind of looked at me blankly and were like, I think one girl actually said, I think my team were interviewing her. I wish I'd been there. But apparently one of the girls said to her, what media do you read? And she looked back at this girl and said, oh, I don't think that's relevant, which was just staggering, because the whole job is about the media. However you read it, it's about the media. Yeah, no, I know. So I wish I'd been there. I was away. But I'm obsessed with newspapers and magazines, and I encourage people to read physical newspapers, because you get so much more from them. Because if you look at online media, you tend to gravitate to the things that you're interested in, which may not be the things that your clients want to engage with. So it's understanding the media and spending that time getting to know it. It's about watching TV programs that maybe you don't think you're interested in, because all those things inform you as to what the media agenda is. And I think if you're not fully up to date with those things, then you can't pitch it to the media. I mean, knowledge is everything in our industry, and interest as well. I mean, we had a client who worked in security, crowd management, which is actually really interesting. And I remember being at a networking event and telling one of my contacts about this client. And she said, well, that sounds really boring. And I said, no, it's actually really interesting, because this is security and crowd management at big venues and at concerts and festivals and things like that. And actually what he did was keeping people safe. And the intricacies of it were really impressive. But I think to be in our job, you need to find everything interesting, because there is always something in everything that's interesting. Absolutely. I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. Because at the end of the day, this is also something that if anyone is listening to this, to us having this conversation, this message that you just said, it's not just for people that are looking to go into the PR industry. I would say the same would apply to people who are publicizing themselves, like the audience, if they're listening to this, they cannot afford an agency, they cannot afford a publicist. This is vital information that they need to have. They need to understand that they need to understand the media landscape, they need to understand the journal language, they need to understand everything about the media so that they're able to sell their story into that landscape. Because otherwise, which journalist are you going to approach, and how are you going to approach that journalist if you don't even know what is trending and what is going on?
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, PR is about piggyback riding on the trending topics. It's about being present and being available at the right moment. One of my lecturer once said to us, PR is what you pray for and advertising is what you pay for. So if you're going to be praying for PR, so some form of publicity, then you need to understand what is going on. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. And it's quite mind-blowing to actually I can't even comprehend how a PR student or somebody looking for work doesn't even have an interest in the very essence of PR.
I know. I was staggered when I heard that. So I just wish I'd been there. I don't know what I would have said.
I would recommend then I think they need to go to University of Westminster. I'm not brand advertising here, but that was a very fundamental aspect of our training. And we were literally required to bring in the Metro newspaper, read an article and share that first thing in the morning. We're literally required to subscribe to PR news and stuff like that, and just know what was happening in our areas of interest, but as well as the wider landscape. So absolutely necessary. As a closing remark, as this is more of a B2C kind of conversation, we're trying to talk to women, especially female entrepreneurs that are just getting started in their businesses. They're just getting their voices heard. What sort of advice would you specifically give to them with view to PR and using PR as a tool?
Yeah, so for anybody wanting to do their own PR, it's about assessing what the business does. It's really getting under the skin of what it is that you want your audience to know about you. What's the impression you want to take away with them? Just looking at things like price point, looking at things your customers are saying about you, looking at where you're sold, where is the right media for you. Do the research, read the magazines, read the newspapers that you think are going to be of interest, because you can tell quite quickly which ones are going to work for you and which aren't, because you can look at what your competition are doing. Actually look at what your competition is doing. If your competition is being featured in specific magazines you want to be in, then those magazines might be interested in picking up your story as well. So it's definitely about coming back to that research. And I think, look at all those opportunities that are there. If someone is looking for somebody to take a podcast or a blog, or if someone's looking for someone to interview, put yourself forward, be confident. Remember that you know the stuff that other people don't know. You might not think you do, but you do actually. And so still having that confidence to do it. And enter awards, see what else is out there. If there are award schemes that you can enter, if it's your anniversary, send a press release to your relevant media, whether it's the local press or whether it's the national press. Find an angle they're going to be interested in. There's quite a lot. I could go on forever.
Of course, but those are just nice sound bites for them to have. Obviously, if they wanted to learn more about PR, and if they wanted to if they can afford you, they can obviously come and visit you or talk to you and connect with you on LinkedIn. Do you mind giving our viewers that information? That way they can reach out to you.
Yeah, of course. The website is www.cerupr.co.uk. So it's said like the angel, but we're missing the H. And it's a very long story, so I shan't bore you with that right now. So it's CERUBPR.co.uk. And you can find me at LinkedIn at Ceri-Jane Hackling. So that's where we are. So if you want to come have a chat with us, if anyone wants to have a chat or a virtual coffee, then give us a shout.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been such an insightful and very interesting conversation that we've had. I really appreciate your time, and it's great having you on the show. And as always, it's so great to have you as a contributing editor to Spotlight Magazine. So thank you so much for your time today, Ceri, and I look forward to continuing this conversation, and perhaps we can have a more nuanced topic that we can go into detail with in the next chat that we have, if that's okay with you.
Of course, thank you. Thank you for having me.